Hello everyone! Today I'm reacting to Lina Vasquez's video, which is called Revealing My Secret, my method for speaking like a native sooner. The reason why I wanted to react to this video is because I like to nitpick methods and try to be critical about things that people say. And it's not going to be just my opinion, because if you know this channel, you know I'm also a language teacher and I also have a master's in linguistics, so I know a bit about language acquisition. So in this video, I will try to both give you my opinion and also try to use my expertise as a teacher and as someone who has studied linguistics. If you want to watch the full video, because I will certainly make a few cuts, then do head down to the description box below and I will put a link there. And let's get started.
We are going to touch on some hot content. We are going to touch on some controversial content, and I am going to show you probably what is my own biggest secret when it comes to training my language skills, which I have never really shown before. So that's going to be intriguing.
I am intrigued.
And the other thing is I'm going to destroy a key fallacy. I'm going to call it a fallacy when it comes to language learning. So today we're going to look at number one, why most people find language learning to be really difficult, and number two, why people never reach their goal of speaking.
That's interesting. That's actually the kind of things I talk about on my channel. And yeah, I don't want to say more. I'm just looking forward to seeing what's her perspective, what's her view on that very important question.
Now, if you believe that language learning has all to do with vocabulary and grammar, learning those, learning how to pronounce those, and that's it, then you, my friends, are about to have a bit of a reality check. And honestly, it's not your fault. A lot of the time, the way that language learning products are marketed, the way that our schools and textbooks have marketed language learning or presented language learning, it is very much about the vocab, the grammar, and putting the two together.
I have a lot of thoughts about this already, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm just looking forward to finding out what she is going to say.
Seeing language just as vocabulary and grammar is like seeing human beings as skin and bones. We are so much more than that, and so is language. And there is this concept in German that we can use because German often has better words than the English language. I'm sorry, but Versprachlichung. Versprachlichung is basically engrossing yourself in the new foreign language in a way that you use it, you learn it as it is spoken in real life. So,
sounds good to me.
One of the key things that is going to get you to speak like a native speaker and to be able to use the language like a native speaker is really to focus on the patterns of the language.
Woo, patterns!
Now, what I mean by focusing on patterns is if we take a common dialogue in everyday life or a common expression that is said to us, a question that we are asked like, how are you? Or for example, when someone says thank you, every single language has a different way of responding to these expressions that has nothing to do with direct translation.
I agree with her, actually. I'm not sure yet where she's going with this, but yeah, it is true. It's not good practice, in my opinion, to directly translate. In some cases it works, you know, if you're just translating the name of an object, but when we're moving towards more conversational language, sometimes there's set phrases which are sort of expected and which make sense, but if directly translated, they would make very little sense. So yeah, I'm with her on this one.
A simple thing like thank you can have a multitude of responses. In German, you would say, like if somebody says Dankeschön, macht nichts, oder keine Ursache. If we literally translate this in English, we're gonna, or even if we try to apply the English way of saying you're welcome, it's not gonna fit.
I agree, of course. In French we say, for example, de rien, which literally translated is something like of nothing, which doesn't make a lot of sense really, because in English you say you're welcome, and the translation, the direct translation, is completely different.
Brits would answer to thank you in a different way. An Australian would say no worries, or no worries mate. A Brit would say don't mention it, or not a problem, or something like that.
We would say no worries. I mean, I'm not British, but in England we say no worries usually. I haven't really heard don't mention it before.
Or that's all right.
Yeah.
You know, that's all right. And to really be able to learn a foreign language, we have to remove this idea of literally translating. Pick up the patterns of the language. What structure, and yes, vocab and grammar are kind of a foundation below all of this, but you have to see what type of structure does this language use in order to express X in my own language. You don't say I am a student in German or in Russian. Ja studentka. Ich bin Studentin. Ich bin Lehrerin. We don't say I am a. So those are the patterns, so key rules that you should learn when it comes to dialogue and speech, and that's going to enhance your speaking.
I agree with her, but I kind of disagree as well. So in that case, it's a pattern, yes, but it has to do with grammar, I believe, because, you know, the rule is in English you say I am a, and then the profession, or I am a man, woman, or whatever, while, you know, in the languages she mentioned, I don't know, I don't speak them, but in French we have a different rule, which is you would say je suis étudiant. You wouldn't say je suis un étudiant. Otherwise, it's as if you were saying I am one student, which sounds a bit strange. So here I think it's more down to the grammar, while before she was talking more about set phrases, I think.
I'm going to show you guys how I train my speaking to native-like speech. So one of the key things that polyglots don't talk about enough, I use a lot of scripting. So why this works and it really gets you speaking fast is because you are training exactly what you would do in real life behind the scenes. So what you're going to see now is that I have 3 resources. Number 1, a native input text. First of all, what I would do is I'm going to pick a topic that I want to talk about. I have picked out an article about Zabota o sobie, so self-care. How do I know this is self-care? Because I translated it yesterday. So this is the text that I'm working with. And what I will do is I'll write it up, keep it simple first of all. So I'll write up what I want to say, and where there are gaps, I will use a translator. So what I will use the translator for is sentences that are quite simple, and I will make sure, if it's for a language that I'm not super advanced in, I will word the sentences a lot more simplistically than I would in another language, because I don't necessarily have that way of, you know, ascertaining that it's 100% correct or it's 100% the way that a native speaker would say it. But the thing about DeepL is it is very accurate. This is the resource or the translating tool that is actually behind Lingui. So Lingui, I have mentioned many times before, Lingui uses DeepL as its translator. And what you will see, let's put in, for example, so let's put in the phrase, it's not the same. Это не одно и то же, yes, but what you see here is that you are given different options. I have heard это не то же самое more than I have the other one. So this is the option I'm going to pick because it sounds better to me. And then I insert it here. So I put that phrase right there. And why do I have this article? When you have an input text and you work with your translator, it gives you phrases that you can literally copy and paste into your own vocabulary and dialogue. Дело не в том. The point is. There you go. I don't need to go and translate, or I don't need to go look up how do I say the point is and find 5 different resources. I have it here.
I have to say I'm confused about how that works.
And what I have done in this script is I've taken bits and pieces, It's like copying and pasting and making a beautiful collage. I have taken bits and pieces from the article where I have a real, correctly written Russian and inserted it with my own stuff. So here I also have the bit of English so that I know what I'm talking about as well. Now we come to actually practicing the speaking. I'm going to show you.
I have not understood what that was. I am so confused. So, because I know Lingui, I think what they do is that, I don't actually know how that works, but I know like their translation is actually quite good because it translates, like it finds not official translations, but I think reliable, relatively speaking, reliable translations, and that gives something that's a bit more natural than Google Translate. And I feel like this does the same, but I'm not sure what she meant by copying and pasting. Maybe she explains a bit later.
My favorite text-to-speech online tool, which is this one, naturalreaders.com. Unfortunately, they don't have Russian. They have English, they have Spanish and different types of Spanish. They have French, Portuguese, German, Italian, Dutch, and Swedish. They don't, however, have Russian. So my beautiful friend Google Translate is going to have to suffice. But this is how I will practice the learning. I literally recorded myself, so you can listen. Break it down, practice, record yourself. This is also how I teach accent training, for example, that you break the speech down into its individual components. Learn the phrases, learn how to pronounce it, and you're basically mimicking and creating your own output in that target language without needing to go essentially the really long and boring way. So I want to see you give it a try. Your little assignment task for the language that you are learning is to copy this method, find some input that you can listen to and take some sentences from, and get your Google document up or word processor or piece of paper, whatever, and create a script, and then learn the script and produce it. And create a video. That's a really good task. I get all of my students to create videos, and it really helps and gives you that motivation and momentum for practicing your speaking.
So it's a bit awkward because I didn't quite understand how she used the tool, but I will say this, I really liked the video anyway. I liked the things she was proposing, trying to not just limit yourself to literal translations, but actually trying to see how people would actually say things. So that's probably why I think it's important to access native material as much as possible and as early as possible, although I can appreciate that for beginners it's hard because the content is not aimed, the native content is not usually aimed for non-native speakers, but for native speakers, therefore it's a bit difficult. But I think it's definitely important to focus on trying to really find out how people actually say things and what sounds natural. And it's really difficult, it takes a lot of time, but I think it's something that's very important for sure. As for accent training, as she says, I think her method makes sense. I mean, I think it's a good one. That's actually the kind of things I would recommend to my students, listen to a dialogue from their textbook, for example, and try to repeat it, because often a good textbook, and especially the recent ones, because I know all the textbooks have more sort of weird and awkward language, but I think more modern textbooks have more natural speech, more natural conversations, and better sound quality as well, the more recent the textbook is, if it comes with a CD. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of value in repeating what people say in the recording, and especially if you don't have access to native speakers to give you feedback. However, I don't know how good that is to necessarily only focus on doing scripts. I'm not saying that's what she said. I'm sure she doesn't only do that, but I feel like that could be time consuming, and maybe for people that are a little less experienced with language learning, they might not really have the what's the word, the sort of skills, I guess, or understanding of language to really know what and how to make sure that something is natural, because it takes a lot of practice, and usually only a native speaker ultimately will be able to tell you what's natural or not. So I'm not too sure. I have to say, because I was a little bit confused about parts of the video, I can't judge too much. That would be unfair because I didn't understand everything. But overall, I thought a video was quite good, actually. You know, anything that gets you speaking and practicing, I think, is good. If that means that, you know, you should maybe make a video and record yourself, that could be fun, especially if you want to measure your progress, you know, 6 months later or a few years later. That can be quite interesting to see where you were at. Definitely would have wanted to have a recording of me speaking English when I was younger. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you later. Bye.